Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Did you miss me?
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. It's never too early to be talking about HHN, right? We might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but we are going to be talking some way too early HHN32 predictions, which we have been planning to do this for a little while, and we had some ideas, and one of ours was already taken and announced, so I'm counting it as a victory. So we're going to be jumping into some way too early HHN32. That's next year's. We're going to toss out a couple different ideas, and we're going to rank it kind of on a 1 through 10 system as to how confident we think this might be appearing. If we're way off, who knows? Maybe we'll come back around, and next year we'll have some more audio clips to pull and say, haha, we told you so. But this is purely us just guessing. This is not speculation by any means. This is not a speculation map. This is just kind of looking at the calendar, picking some stuff that we think has some ties to the event as a whole and saying, hey, this might be a good option.
Yeah, I don't know how accurate I did my picks to this. Like, my predictions may not be specifically like house related, but we'll see how they come out, and hopefully I did what you asked me to do.
I have one that is such a stretch. It's just so ridiculous.
I believe it. My dogs suck. They wait till the very moment this starts happening, and they start going off. So I'm sorry, everybody, for hearing my idiot dog in the background.
They just wait. They wait until 9 o'clock to start going at it. Well, I'm going to dive into the beer that I have selected for tonight. Tonight, I'm diving into Elysian one more time, but this is the Contact Haze Hazy IPA.
I've had that
really
before.
No definition as to, no reason as to why I'm drinking it for this episode, but it's a new beer, it's a new episode, it's a new day, and there's some new concepts for HHN32. So just going to dive into it.
No, it's good stuff. I've had it before.
I do like those hazy IPAs. It's pretty soft for a hazy though. It's very, very orange, like orange centric.
Heavy citrus on it. Yep.
Yeah. They say it has bursts of bright raspberry, citrus, guava, and passion fruit. So it's with a little floral note, but it's very, I almost don't get as much like hazy taste. It's really just like a very fruit oriented, which is nice. It's refreshing.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of bitter, probably a little in the back end, but it's definitely a citrus forward, pretty citrus heavy beer for a hazy. Well, I mean, I don't want to say for a hazy because most hazies are, but I mean, there are some that are heavy on the bitter, and then there are some that are definitely heavier on the sweeter citrus side of it. So that's definitely one of that particular IPAs. So yeah, it's pretty good. I've had it before. Like I said, I'm not drinking it. I'm drinking something boring. Just got a good old fashioned silver bullet like I usually do. So when we're remote, I'm usually not drinking something crazy, but hey, silver bullets kill werewolves, so it counts.
Oh, there we go. We'll keep using that one. All right, so let's just get into the first one that was already announced. So we didn't discuss it last week on our awards show because we were just we wanted to dedicate that to HHN31 and all that it was. Thank you very much. On to the next one. So now we are going to be talking 32 going forward. And the announcement that kind of shocked everyone came out on opening day while people were still in the park waiting for Horror Nights Stay and Scream to even get going. They announced that Chucky from the sci-fi reboot show or series on Sci-Fi is going to be coming back to HHN for a haunted house on both coasts. This was announced by Chucky himself, and this really shouldn't come as a surprise. I mean, we've had a scare zone in the last couple of years. We've had the photo booth there the last 2 years. This was on our list of at even before that moment, we were scripting out a couple of our what do we do next episodes, way too early predictions one, and Chucky was on that short list. So I'm counting that as a win because we were gonna say that. They just pulled the trigger and for some reason announced a house on Halloween night, closing night of HHN.
I would argue the more surprising thing about it is that the fact they announced something this early. Less so that it was Chucky. Like, they obviously, that's, it's a surprise, but like we all kind of assumed that Chucky was definitely going to have a house at some point coming up. I mean, they've done so much with him in the last 2 years alone. And it's almost more of a surprise that they haven't done a house with him yet, with the movie that it came out, and they had plans for the show. So I guess they were probably just kind of waiting until the show dropped and to see how popular it was and how well received it was before they decided to put the effort and money into building a house. But I think the bigger surprise, at least for me, is the fact that they announced it Halloween night before this event was even over.
Yeah, not the most surprising property, but surprising as to how early it was actually announced officially. So that is cool. I mean, it is fun. Gives us something to look forward to. I have not watched the new series at all, so I will have to kind of do my homework on that and start working. But I got plenty of time to catch up on that. It's only 2 seasons, I think, as of now. But yeah, I mean, we were talking about possibilities for this list. I think the day before. I think on that Sunday we were in line talking about possible houses, and we had brought up Chucky, and then lo and behold, the next day it actually gets announced, of course. So we got receipts. I'm counting that as a win. I don't care.
Hey,
we were going to say we were going to mention it.
It's fine. I won't take that away from us.
Yeah. So we were going to talk about that, but now we don't have to talk as much about that. So on a scale of 1 to 10, is Chucky going to be there? I'm going to say a 10. It's definitely going to be there next year.
I would say 11. I'd even go as far to say it's over the 10 scale.
Ooh, all right.
Making that hot take.
So let's jump into this next one that I have. I know you don't see my list, but
okay.
Another property that
we're not in the same room together.
Yeah, no. A property that I don't know much about, nor does anybody else, because this was a property that got pushed, and it was supposedly rumored for last year. So Evil Dead Rises. I believe it's going to be an HBO movie, HBO series. Comes out in April, so a good time frame for a release before an HHN, because it comes in that spring. It should still be hot, and then by the time September rolls around, it'll still have some steam there. This was rumored to be.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's one of those properties that like it will get drawn no matter when they release it. It doesn't have to be on the back of something being released necessarily. Obviously, it will be, but I think Bruce Campbell, the whole like Bruce Campbell, Ash character plus the Evil Dead, I think it's gonna be a draw for a lot of people, anyways. So I don't think it's a big deal, but it's definitely going to probably come at some point. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You can continue.
No, you're fine. But from what I do know of this, though, this isn't Ash and this isn't Bruce Campbell. This is like a reboot,
so
a
reimagining.
Telling.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like if it happened in like an apartment building or something, or like a high rise apartments.
Okay.
I haven't seen anything released trailer wise. Yeah, so it's like it has the name Evil Dead, but it doesn't have the characters. So I don't know. That's why I was confused, because this was supposed to be rumoredly in Hellblock, and in the queue line it was set up so like ridiculously long that I couldn't imagine it being there. Yeah, so it blows my mind that they thought it was going to be that long.
I mean, maybe. I mean, who knows? I mean, it very well could have been. Because we say that because it's a long queue in relatively small enclosed space. But you look at the queue for Coven. You know what I mean? Yeah. They stuck Coven in that queue, and that queue goes back and forth like 7 or 8 times in front of the stage. So I can't imagine that if they thought, that the Coven was going to do those kind of numbers either. But who knows? I mean, maybe they really did think that Evil Dead would have pulled a lot of people, and it might have. I mean, if the show had come out and dropped and it was a popular show, I could see it being relatively busy or a longer wait. I don't think anything was going to be longer than Halloween this year. I think we kind of both thought that anyways. But yeah, I don't know. I would be surprised if the queue was consistently that long, but I wouldn't also be surprised if for a few nights or on the busier nights it was that long.
Yeah, so I'm not sure like how big of a draw they thought Evil Dead Rises was going to have, because that queue line was crazy. So they had the plans for it. It doesn't seem like bridges were burned, because I mean the only reason the supposed house didn't go through was because it got delayed until April. So obviously we're not going to release a house on a property nobody's ever seen, and you obviously don't want to ruin the surprise of it. So how I guess a scale 1 through 10, where do you think this lands on that list?
I'm probably going to say an 8. I think it's pretty high chance that this is going to happen. I mean, if I know that it hasn't been confirmed that it really was or not, but it's kind of like through the grapevines been confirmed that this was definitely the house. Not name dropping anybody, but like we have been told by other people that
multiple people
have connections to HHN and to Universal that said that, yeah, you guys are right, that it was supposed to be Evil Dead Rises, and because of the show getting pushed back, we had to do something else, which I think at this point is pretty much accepted amongst everybody in the community. We kind of accepted that's the truth. My thought is that they probably didn't just lose the rights or only have it for 1 year. My guess is that because of that happening, they were like, let's plan it. We'll push it back till next year's event. And, we'll drop the show in the springtime. It'll hopefully be popular or still be popular come the fall, and we'll catch back up and do the house again. Because my guess is they must have had things built, or they must have had a lot of things already
at least planned
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine that like they went and destroyed everything, that they had built anything. Especially if the plan was to do the house this year coming up.
Yeah.
Not this year.
Yeah, I can imagine if they think it's I would go like 7 on this one as well. I think it's a pretty good guess at this point, as what all these are essentially are guesses. But yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. I would assume. Do you want to jump over to something that you have on your list?
Yeah, I've got 2 that are kind of in conjunction with each other, so I can do the first one and maybe. Oh, hi, Millie. No one wants to hear you. Sorry. My hound wants to agree. Oh, she's such a butthead. I'm sorry, everybody. Hold on 1 second. Oh man, this is going to be a fun episode for you to edit tonight. So I actually have a couple that aren't really in conjunction, but I kind of put them in conjunction. So I'll start with one, and then we can always talk about the next one, or we can maybe come back to it. But my first one is the Fear Factor stage will be removed this year prior to HHN next fall.
Okay.
And I think that's going to have an impact on HHN, obviously. I know that it's been in the plans or in the works to get rid of that stage at some point. It was supposed to be this year, and it didn't happen. But I have a feeling that they're going to go forward with those plans and knock the stage down for this year, or at least dismantle it and repurpose that area of the park. That's a prediction I have. I mean, again, it's not specifically HHN related, but I think it's a big enough.
It'll impact it for sure.
Impact to the event that I think that if that happens, then the question is, what do we do with the show? Are we going to have a show? Will they put up a temporary stage somewhere to do a show? Will they potentially use the stage out in front of the where that queue is? Maybe use that area. Who knows? But as of right now, one of my predictions would be that come HHN 2023, the Fear Factor stage will no longer be standing at Universal Orlando.
Yeah. And they're going to have to find something. They can't just do without any stage shows. We saw how crowded it was this year with one stage show and one lagoon show and 10 houses. You're going to need to do something somewhere.
Right. So this is why this kind of leads into my next prediction. So if you want to just go into my next one, and we can just kind of rate the two of them together.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my next prediction is they're going to remove the stage, and like you said, to make up for the fact that there's no show, they're going to add 2 additional houses.
2.
Yeah, because I think they have the space
Okay.
for it. Obviously, I think going forward, they realize they can use the Hell Block area. They put that in the
Yep.
soundstage, right? So they used that, and then they used behind or the queue, basically the Fast and the Furious ride. So they used that
Yep.
building for a house as well. I think because they didn't use the pop tent back where Scary was, I
Yep.
think they
The
can add
MIB
one
10.
there, and then where the stage was, put another pop up
Mhm.
behind there somewhere. So
Okay.
that's my again. It's a stretch. I know it's something that's probably not going to happen. I don't think this is going to be highly ranked. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why I said it kind of works in conjunction with the Fear Factor stage being removed, because I think Universal's not going to keep it up just for HHN. That's kind of my point.
No, yeah.
So unless Universal is planning on putting another show in there, I mean, there's definitely obviously a possibility that they'll just keep the stage and add another show. But the question remains: how popular was Fear Factor when it was live, and does Universal think that it's worth keeping that stage up if they're not going to get enough traffic through it throughout the rest of the year? So what's the point of keeping it, especially if their plan was to get rid of it eventually? My guess
Mhm.
is they're not gonna. I guess I've said it already, but the point is that I don't think they're gonna keep the stage up just because HHN uses it. Um,
No.
Having it up for 2 months out of the 12-month year doesn't make much sense, especially if that space isn't being used right now. It's kind of a waste of space. Um, so I think that they're going to go forward with their plans to remove it. And I think until they come up with something better for a stage show, they're going to make up for that that lost, that thing that pulls some of the people away from other houses by
Yeah.
adding two additional houses.
Yeah.
I'll make
I
that 12
mean,
houses.
so one of my predictions was definitely adding a house, for sure. I think the amount of people that are coming through, they kind of have to. I think this would be the year to do it. The only downfall on that is, do they have the manpower, or do they have the staffing? We did see that there were issues at times this year of staffing. So how would that work with a
Yeah,
whole additional
that's
house?
that's going to be an issue. One of my thoughts was potentially, and again, I don't know how popular this will be with many people, but potentially pulling one of the scare zones and not having a scare zone in one of the areas and pulling
Mhm.
those people into an additional house. Again, I mean, I'm like I said, I don't know how popular that would be, but my question would be to you or to others: would you rather have an additional house or another additional 2 houses and one less scare zone, or keep the scare zone and keep it at 10 houses? You see what I'm saying? So like, is
I
it
th-
is it a
I th-
huge loss if that happens?
I think there's a way to do an 11th house without stripping one of the scare zones. I mean, they do get a bunch of applications. They would just have to probably take on some
Hire more
more
people.
people that they may not want to,
And I think
or like those people that are on the fence. They say, yeah, come on in, we need you.
I don't think Universal's stupid either. I mean, if they see that like they were struggling staffing this year, they're gonna look at ways to improve that. Like it's not just gonna
Yeah,
well
they have
that
the whole year
happened.
too.
Like they have the
Yep.
whole year to plan and figure it out, whether that's pay your employees more, whether that's, offer better benefits, offer them more nights to go to the event as attendees rather than just
Yep.
having to work all the time. Um I think there's ways to help improve that issue. Pretty easy ways to figure it out. Maybe some more creative ways that they got to come up with, but they're not stupid. Like Universal knows what they're doing, so
They'll
they'll
figure it out.
find a
Yeah.
way. Find a way to figure that problem out. I don't think necessarily they'll have that big of an issue staffing enough people to do an additional or 2 additional houses.
Yeah. So, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, then, where do you feel that those
I mean,
ones, and you could break it up into different degrees?
no, I'll just rank them both of them once. To be honest with you, I think they're interesting ideas. I'm not super confident in them. I'd probably give them like a 3.
Yeah.
But I just think it's an interesting idea, especially since they've been talking now more than once in recent time, like within the last year or so, of getting rid of that stage. And we were saying it
Mhm.
ourselves, like leading up to this event, like if they get rid of the stage, what are they going to do? I mean, they have to do
Yeah, they have
something.
to
And
have
they
a
can't
people
just
leader.
they got to do something to keep some of the crowds at the houses down, whether that's add a house, add 2 houses, add another scare zone, add something in that area, even if there's no stage.
Mhm.
They got to do something. But I don't want to keep going on and on about it, but I do think that Universal is planning on getting rid of it. They're not going to keep it there for no reason, and there's no reason for them to keep it all year round if it's just for 2 months of the year for Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah, no, I'm on that boat too. I would say, I mean, I think you got like a 3 or a 4 for taking down the stage. Yeah, so I think, sorry, we are having some issues with recording. So if these don't line up properly, this is why.
We
So I
apologize.
think the area I was discussing was the idea of adding at least an additional house. I would put that as a 5.5. I feel like we are getting to that point where it's needed. I mean, just
Yeah.
some of the wait times were so absurd this year. That I heard a lot of complaints about the Express Pass as well. There was a couple times where like the Express Pass line was running a little bit longer than other times. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be that big of an issue, but I mean, if I'm paying as much money as I would be paying for a frequent fear pass with Express, and I'm still waiting 40 minutes, I'm gonna be upset. Like that's not fast for like if I'm gonna pay an additional, if I'm paying around $600 for this, I don't want to be waiting in line for 45 minutes. So the fact that the regular lines are 150, Halloween hit like 200 minutes a couple times during the season. I mean, that's just that is absurd. And
I
you do
think
need to do something about that.
they got to do something about it. My problem is, or not my problem. My question would be is how do they fix that problem? Because I mean, I only got to wait in Express once. It was for the night we did Blumhouse and the Express line, and it was like we were in the Express line for about 20 minutes, I think, to get into it. And it had a pretty long wait. How you fix that problem is a great question. I don't know. Because like if you think about it, I mean, when the regular line is already 120, 140, 160, use it 200 like minutes, like you can't just wait. I guess it's a hard question to answer. Yeah, they got to do something about it. How they
And the only
improve it?
solution is additional houses or like shows, just something to allow people to be at is my answer for that one, I think.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, that's what leads me to believe that I think this will be the year that we get an additional house. I think it has, and it's not just like a wish list item. It's not being greedy. It's just I think logistically they just have to do it. And if it's not this year, it's coming. Because it is getting a little absurd with some of the wait times, with some of the crowds. Even if you expand it a little bit further into some of the back portions of the other park, just to spread people out more, it gets so crowded at some points, and it is becoming a little ridiculous at some point. So that's why I'm saying 5.5 out of 10 for at least the possibility of getting an 11th house. I don't know about a 12th house. Fair. I think we'll get one at a time, but
I mean, you're right. It's fair. I mean, maybe I'm like I said. I think I'm kind of going on a limb a little bit, but I think they have to have something. They got to replace that stage with something. If that stage comes down, they have to have something in place of it, like you said, to pull some of the crowd away. You can't just have 10 houses and no stage show and expect the crowds to not be worse than what they were.
But
you're right. I think. I mean, if I had split up the scores, I'd agree with you. I think I'd go a little bit higher on an extra house or an extra 2 houses versus if combining the both of them. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I think everybody would like to see extra houses. It's definitely not something we'd all be complaining about. That's for sure.
Yeah, no. All right. Let's check out one of the next items that I have on my list. Something that I have seen floated around some of the forums, but this was actually on my list before that as well, was The Exorcist. Now, we haven't seen The Exorcist at Horror Nights since 26, I think it was. They had a house there, but a lot of people were saying that, the 50th anniversary is coming up, and then that's kind of why they're leaning towards it. I didn't look as much into the anniversary aspect of it, but more on the fact
50th
that
anniversary.
I believe that's what it is, right?
Holy
Am I
crap.
making that up?
Sorry, I didn't mean to like
I might
stop
be
your
making
thunder,
it
but
up.
like that's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, it's. I mean, you're probably right because it was in the 70s. So
70,
wow,
so
it's
70,
73.
70,
Yeah, I guess that's
73, 72, 70, yeah, 73 would be.
yeah.
But yeah, so the
Man.
anniversary doesn't mean as much to me, but there
Holy
is right. There is a remake or a reboot or something along those lines that Blumhouse is distributing, and it is through Universal Pictures. Now
yeah,
that
that's pretty good.
remake or whatever doesn't come out. It doesn't come out till October 13th.
Yeah.
But much like Halloween Kills didn't come out till later, and Halloween was still at the event, I could see, like it doesn't need to be the newest
It's not
version of
like
The
it's
Exorcist to
right,
still
and it's
promote
not like
Exorcist.
it's not a new movie. It's not like a new idea or a new theme.
Mhm.
Everyone knows The Exorcist, and even if it's a reboot or a soft reboot of the movie, it's not like you're not already aware of what goes on in that movie. Everybody knows the story. Everybody knows Reagan. Everybody knows the whole "your mother sucks cocks in hell." Like we all kind of
Yeah.
get that stuff. We know that.
Mhm.
So putting a house together, I don't think would really affect. They're not going to give anything away, I guess, from the show. Like even if they do some new things with the movie, nothing's going to get given away or nothing's going to get spoiled. So I don't think that would be a stop on them doing the house, especially if Universal owns it.
Yeah, and looking at like what Halloween did this year, where they took, Halloween was at 24. They kind of did this. Obviously, you're still doing the Halloween story. It was just done a little bit differently. So it's the same stuff, but just slightly different. Same thing that they did with Chainsaw. Same story, just slightly different. I could see them pulling the trigger on The Exorcist. You could have the same story, just called The Exorcist, and it's that name out there is going to in turn cross promote the new movie that they're going to be putting out through Blumhouse, which they obviously have a working relationship with. And it's a Universal Pictures movie. I think it makes sense. Why would it not? I'll say The Exorcist is at like a 6 for me, 6 out of 10. I'm a little bit more than half confident.
I'd give it a 7. I think we're right around the same. I think it's a good possibility that's going to be something.
I had a feeling that this year, and I don't necessarily if they're going to be like top tier IPs, but I do have a feeling that this is going to be a strong IP year, like a heavy IP year. I don't know how strong they'll be in like.
One of my predictions too is we're going to have more IP houses this year.
Yeah. I just think I think they're going to. I don't want to say put a pause on a lot of the original stuff, but I think they're going to try and dip their toes in a lot of the IPs because I think the last couple of years they've had some big ones. I think this year they'll have maybe some lesser big ones, but they'll have more of them.
I think part of it's
on there.
I think part of it's solely just because, with the whole thing that happened with Evil Dead, I think just by sake of that, with technically six originals, I think that they're going to have to probably do at least one extra IP this year and make it like either 6 IPs or maybe even more than that.
Yeah, and this is even with 30, you lost that Billie Eilish, quote unquote IP to another original. So I feel like they've been the last couple of years forced to throw more originals out there because of IPs that have dropped, not by them wanting to necessarily have that many originals, which we're here for. I'm okay with that. So like if some IPs drop and they have to scramble to put an original in there, more often than not, I'm okay with it. Sometimes you get case files, which obviously you had more time to prepare for, but sometimes you get Hell Black Horror, and that's the gamble you take. Next on my list was I have Halloween on there again. Are we going to get any iteration of Halloween? Do you think we're going to get Season of the Witch? Do you think we're going to get something along the lines of the new trilogy at all now that it's actually complete, and we do like an actual like Halloween, I guess you could call it just Halloween Ends, where we revisit the the newest iteration of this Halloween trilogy and kind of catch up with Michael Myers. Does HHN31's Halloween, does that lead directly into 32 where we get a follow up of, what is it, 40 years later or something?
Well, since I don't rate anything 0, I don't want to rate anything 0. I'm going to give it a 1. I don't think we're going to see Halloween again, but back to back. I mean, outside of Stranger Things, has it happened before? Have we really had like back to back?
We've had some back to backs.
Have you?
But nothing like, I don't think that often. So I too am also going to be ranking a Halloween of any sorts. I'm going to give it a 1, and then I'm going to give Halloween 3 Season of the Witch a 3, and I'm just going to hope for it.
Not just because we want it. we're praying for it. I mean, if that was to happen, you're right. I mean, at least at that point, it wouldn't be like another Michael house back to back.
Yeah.
At least it'd be something different. But outside of that, I can't see them bringing back Michael Myers for 2 straight years.
And I wouldn't even call it Halloween Season of the Witch. I would just call the house Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
People would know. So let's jump down now.
Go back to one of mine if you want to.
Yeah. Let's go over yours, and then we'll jump back and forth a little bit.
I just, because you mentioned Billie Eilish, I got to bring this up. This is going to piss Pete off, so I'm sorry, Pete. It's probably going to piss you off a little bit too. But I do think that this musical artist house thing is going to become a thing. I think I would not be surprised if we see another musical artist of some kind has either a house or a scare zone next year. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a house, but I just think that look at it this way: if the COVID year didn't get canceled and we had Billie Eilish, I still think The Weeknd would have been a house. For this event for 31. I don't think he was like put in there because they couldn't get Billie again, or because Billie couldn't do that
she
year.
She switched her whole persona.
Yeah. So I think that that's more proof that if there's a possibility of them getting a musical artist of some kind to do something, they're gonna do it. So do they have somebody in mind? Maybe they already got something planned, or maybe this will become like an annual thing. I know that everybody we all don't want that. Like, don't do it just to do it. Like, do it if it makes sense and the house is going to be good. But I just have a feeling that with how popular his house was, again, some people don't agree with me on that one, but I think that it was more popular than people want to admit. I think Universal knows that, and I think Universal is going to take advantage of it if they can. Now, who knows? We've only got really like 2 or 3 events to really go on with that, but I just think that there's a chance that this becomes an annual thing.
So my thing with that too is, like, when you have an artist like The Weeknd and how popular it was, do they do it still even with an artist that's a lot less recognizable, or like, because the bar is set so high at this point?
No, I know that, right? But I think
popularity
that
of the artist,
it goes both ways. I think that because it was popular and because of the artist, they're going to say that, this is something we can do. Like, everyone was saying, like, oh, they'll never make The Weeknd work. And then for the most part, it did work. So now do they have the confidence in being able to do it with pretty much anyone? I still don't think that Universal's doing it just to do it. I think that they're picky enough, or they're smart enough to know who's going to work and who isn't. So they're not just going to go find somebody to say, hey, we want a musical artist at the event. Do you want to do a house? I still think it's going to be if someone comes to them and says, hey, we saw what you did with The Weeknd. We saw what you did with Rob Zombie. We heard you were going to do something with Billy. We think we can do something with you and come up with a cool idea. I could see that happening. But again, I don't think Universal is going out of their way to find just anybody. I think that they're more apt to do it if the opportunity arises. So maybe my opinion's more along the lines of they would like to do an annual thing, but only if it makes sense.
Yeah. Now, do you think they would have The Weeknd back and do one on Dawn FM?
No, I mean, I would honestly. Well, you say that, it's funny that you bring that up. I mean, I think that
It'd almost be like a part 2, I guess.
yeah, I mean that's more likely than them bringing Halloween back. I think, and that
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's crazy,
I
but
think so too.
I think that they'd be more likely to do a weekend part 2 before they do another Michael House, just
Yeah,
because they've done Michael how many times, and do they really want to just keep going back to that? Well, it works because people like it, but how
it
many
gets
Michael Myers
overrun.
houses
Yeah,
can you do over and over again in a short period of time, and it loses some of that magic.
yeah. That's. I mean, it was the most accessible slasher for a while, and unfortunately, I think it just got a little too repetitive. Because I love me my Michael, but I there hasn't been a wide variety in that category for a little while since like Jason and Freddy's rights
Right.
are all kind of up in the air and whatnot. So I guess going back to your musical artist prediction, how confident on a 1 through 10 that there's going to
I'm
be
still only
a
going to give that
music related house?
I'm still going to give that a 5. I'm not quite
Okay.
super confident on it, but I'm more confident on it than other things. I think that it's a good
Yep.
possibility. I think just looking at the history of it, at least the recent history of it, I just can't imagine that it's not in the back of their heads that they would like to keep doing it if they
Yeah.
can. I mean,
Yeah.
with you've got Rob Zombie, you've got, like I said, Billy was supposed to be out, then The Weekend. I think it's just something that they've got in the back of their heads, back of their mind.
Yeah. I think I'm going to put it at like a 6.5.
Oh wow, you're actually more
Like you said,
confident than I am.
I think the trend is, I mean, because like you said, we had Rob Zombie, we were supposed to have Billy, we like that's 3 years in a row. Like
Right.
it's just
That's my point.
it's
Yeah.
going from 29. Um, if we didn't have COVID, we would have had Billy, and then we would
Right.
have had the Weekend, and then who knows? So I am confident that is something that they're looking towards building, um, like as a consistent relationship. As far as like who, what, when, where, I'm not sure. I think the leader would have to be going back to the Weekend. I mean,
I
and
think at the
doing
moment,
something.
yeah.
Unless there's something else that's coming out, that
I mean,
is that big. I just don't think you can go down. I don't think you can downgrade from
yeah,
his
you
fan
have to
base size.
you have to be able to pull something. I mean, obviously, like the fanboy in me would love to see them do like a Welcome to Horror Woodhouse and have Ice Nine Kills come and do something with them because
Yep.
they're so well built for horror. But are they too related to existing properties where would it work? That's the question. So
Yeah.
that's more of like the fan in me that wants it. Obviously, probably wouldn't work, but you're right. It has to be something like The Weekend again, where it's a big draw, huge fan base that has relevancy to something within the horror genre, or at least something you can make relevant to the horror genre, much like The Weekend.
Yeah,
So,
and it's like when you have bands like Ice Nine, Slipknot, Misfits, like those aren't. That's not the same level, people.
no, they're
Like
not.
I love those
Definitely, they're
bands.
not.
I love those
Yeah.
bands
He likes
as
them,
probably
but
more. But I understand the demographics and the amount of people that like it. So like the only other people that are like if you want to talk about people in that like upper echelon of fame, I don't know what her music videos or music is. But because I've been rewatching American Horror Story, Lady Gaga is
Lady
a name that,
Gaga, yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. I
You
haven't
want to
seen her
see people
videos.
lose their shit?
Yeah, right. A
Announce a
Lady
Lady
Gaga
Gaga
house.
house.
Metallica. I mean, they're bigger name wise. Those are just the
We all thought. Remember,
stuff that
we all did think that Metallica was going to be a thing at
a
30.
scare zone from Seek and
Yeah.
Destroy.
Everybody was the first thing everybody thought of.
And those are, and that I was, because I've been rewatching Hotel, so like Gaga pops up there,
Ooh,
and
one of my
obviously
favorite
Metallica
seasons.
was Stranger Things. But like there are those two different levels of musical artists, and I don't think you
There
can go
is. No,
down.
I agree with you there. Definitely. It needs
So I
to
think
be a
the
big
most
name.
likely would be the Dawn FM would be continuing a story of The Weekend, in some capacity, and just changing it a little bit and adding new stuff. Let's go into the Universal Monsters debate.
Oh boy.
So I mean, I hate to say it's pretty obvious that it'll be back, but I'm fairly
Yeah.
confident. I mean, I would put it at like
I'm
an
giving it
8.5,
I'm
a
giving it a
9.
10.
Yeah. So now the
10 out of 10.
question
I'm
is,
100%. I'm 100% positive they'll have another Monsters
yeah.
house.
So now the question is, what
Which
iteration,
monster?
what creatures, what monsters, what are 2 smashed together? Is it 3 again?
Yeah.
Did they learn their lesson? Did they not?
Well,
What are you thinking?
well, I don't think it'll be a single monster. I think it'll
I
be
don't
a
think so
mashup
either.
of some kind. I think that's kind of the direction they're going with it. I think it'll be another versus type house like we had this year. I honestly think they're probably going to go back to the same well. I don't think they're going to have the same 3 monsters, but I think it will have some iteration of the Wolfman and or the Mummy. Maybe I'm wrong, but who knows? They may even do a continuation of the story that they had this year. To be honest with you, that would piss me off more than anything else because, like,
What
I
if
was
they?
already
So yeah, there's a couple things. So what if they flipped it? What if we got Hollywood's and Hollywood got ours? What if we got the London-based
see
Legends Collide?
that would bug me. Like, I get that it's like, one was one and one was the other, but it's still the same story.
Same.
And to me,
Yeah.
that's lazy. Just to say, oh, we're gonna give you LA's and they're gonna get yours. Like, that's okay, fine, but like, if you want to win me over, you've got to do different things every year when it comes to monsters. Don't just do the same stories over and over again. Not to say that they have. I mean, the last couple. I mean, to be
But
fair,
if they did this one, it would be.
that's what I think. Yeah, I think it's like the same.
No, I'm
over
agreeing.
again.
Yeah, that's if they're doing the same house. If they're just going to do Legends Collide, but it's like the different coasts. Yeah, that's lazy. Would you take that if that was an 11th house?
I mean, I guess I would just to get the extra house, but I wouldn't be super pumped
I
on it.
wouldn't-
I
yeah.
wouldn't be stoked.
I would
don't
prefer
think
not
Universal
to have this happen. I don't think it will, but
I don't think they'll do that. No. But I do think that you're probably going to get like Wolfman versus Frankenstein or Wolfman versus the creature or something like that. I mean, I think you and I both agree that we would want to see just a solo creature house, but they're not going to do that.
I'd love to see that. No, I don't know if the whole Dead Man's Pier, like water-based house, is gonna hurt the chances of getting creature this year. So it's
I
not
don't
like
think so.
similar.
Different enough.
The 2 that I had kind of blocked out together would be some sort of Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback, like
Yeah, those are
style
deeper cuts,
thing.
though. Do you think they would give us those before they gave us a creature? Because I feel like creature's a bigger character.
I feel like he is too, but I feel like they just don't like him. It just,
Kinda sucks.
but like I remember the Phantom scene and the Hunchback scene in the original like Universal Monsters house was very cool. I think it'll give us a chance to have like a gothic-y feeling house, which is something that we didn't really touch on too much. I'm trying to
to be honest, to be fair with maybe, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a versus house. I could very well see them going back and doing another like compilation type house like we had in 29. I think I could see them doing that again. But if they do that, it will be just the standard monsters once more. I don't think it'll be anything different. You're just going to get your vampires and your Draculas, your mummies, your Wolfman, maybe creature, maybe a couple extra thrown in there that are deeper cuts, but I don't think they're going to give us just like 2 obscure characters that very few people know about. Because to be honest with you, how many people actually know that like Phantom and Hunchback
is a
are
legit
Universal monsters? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, just from the house alone, if people are goers of HHN, and they remember them from that house, that is how they'll remember, but not by any other means, I don't think. But I think it would be a cool story of like the Phantom either has to relocate to a new town, and he really relocates to the town where Hunchback is, and he keeps when the Hunchback is pulling the bell, he's fucking up with the Phantom when he's trying to play the organ, and like that's kind of their beef right there. Something along those lines. Maybe that would be.
I'd be more pumped about that. Like that actually sounds interesting to me. Like I'd be okay with that.
that's just something I kind of that's how I could logically put those two together. The only other one was if we did like a Phantom and Creature again. Phantom is like had to relocate or whatever, and then Creature ends up in his swamp area or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think Phantom and Hunchback both fit into like that gothic-y like style. That would be something that if it's not like a creature house, I'm okay with Phantom and Hunchback. I think they're obscure. I think it's fun. So for Phantom and Hunchback, I'll give it like a 5. I'm not super confident in it. It is a shot in the dark. I did take like Dracula, Mummy, Frankenstein, Brides. I took them off the table, and really, there's only so many other ones left. It's Phantom, Hunchback, like Creature. You could do a Jekyll and Hyde style house. But other than those ones, I'm not sure.
I mean, there
how
really
far
aren't
the
a
list
lot,
goes now.
to be honest with you. I mean, again, I'm not an expert on the monsters. I know some people are,
Yeah.
but I'm not, and I just
I'm
don't think
not
there's
either.
that many. And I just, if I'm going to rank them, I'm like I said, I'm going 10 out of 10 that they're definitely going to have another Monsters House next year. I think it's a trend they're going to stick with because they know it works. People like it.
Yeah.
But like I said before, established, well-known characters, I'm giving it like a 7 out of 10.
Mhm.
More deeper cut under the radar characters that a lot of people don't even realize are Universal monsters, like the Hunchback and Phantom, I'm giving it like a 5. I think there's a chance that we'll see them, but I think the only way you're going to see those characters is if it is a compilation house where they can put the big baddies in there as well. I don't think you're going to get just like, I know where you're coming from, and I agree with you. I think those would be great ideas. I just don't think that they're going to do that.
Maybe like a Phantom and Dracula or something.
Yeah, they're going to have at least one
Heavy
hitter because that's just how Universal thinks. They think that just people want to see that. And to be honest with you, I think that a large majority of the community wants that because they're so stuck on those characters. I mean, look how much backlash I got from just being being down on the Monsters House this year. So, I mean, I think it's just one of those things where Universal's like, well, we know they're popular. We know they work. It's less work for us. It's easier for us to come up with a story because we own those characters pretty much. We can do whatever we want with them. They said it on the tour. All they got to do is they go to Universal Studios. They say, hey, we want to use these characters for a house. They're like, yeah, go ahead, whatever. And they let them use the characters. So I don't think it's difficult for them to come up with something at all.
What I do think about this might be like a very early hot take. If they do the Universal monsters, if they do like a Phantom or a Dracula or something along those lines, I think that they will put it more into a soundstage up front. And I think that this will be the house that they try to mimic Dead Man's with, being that very beautiful atmospheric house. Because if we go to something like Dracula and Phantom, it's a little less scary in your face than like the Mummy swiping out. But I think you could really build up a really cool like gothic aesthetic, sort of how like the intro of the Brides was, but like walking up to like the big building. And I just think the decor inside of like, a recently moved into rundown Phantom style mansion would lead to a very beautiful aesthetic. So I think that'll be, if that comes to fruition, I think that might be something that they try to mimic, because out of all the reactions from this year in Dead Man's about just how beautiful it was, I think that like really it should stick in their brain that, sometimes you don't need to have a super scary house all of the time. It can be just a beautiful house.
I agree. Yep.
Let's see. We'll go to my next one, and then I'll. Okay, so we'll jump onto mine. The Last of Us. Now, this was at one point on a map, but I think that was just kind of a misconception with Descendants of Destruction. But this is an HBO series, a big one. This is like, I think Pedro Pascal or Oscar, was it Pedro Pascal in this one? I think he's the lead. So, yeah. It comes out it starts airing January 15th. It is a Warner Brothers production on HBO. Now January is a little ways away, but from when the event starts, you're talking 8 months after the fact. Maybe it wraps up in like late February, early March, so maybe only 6 months or so. I have not played these games. Have you? I think we've talked about this
I
before.
have
You've
played the first one a little bit. I
yeah.
never really got too much into them. So the popularity of it is an interesting discussion to have because yes, it's a big property game wise, but the question is how many people that go to HHN, how much how many what's the percentage of the community that is, you know, large enough into the game community that they really know what this property is. I think the show will help.
Mhm.
Um, but I
And
think a
that's what
lot
it
of the
depends on. It
interest will
really
come from
depends
the
on the show.
show. Right.
Yeah, it's be very curious to see how big this show is. You know, is this going to be the show that everyone's talking about,
Right.
or is it going to just
Because
kind of be another
the funny
series?
thing is like I bet you ask a number of people that are going to watch it and you go, "Hey, did you know this was actually a game first?" And they'll go, "What? I didn't know that."
Yeah.
Cuz think about this. How many people do you think know that the show The Witcher on Netflix is actually a video game? It's a book too. That's what the video game is based on. It's a book, but if you ask a number of people that, "Hey, did you know that that's actually based on based partially on a video game too?" They'll be like, "What? No, no, it's not. It's a book." I'm like, "See, I think less people are gamers that come to this event than they are like readers or TV show watchers or
Yeah.
movie watchers.
Yeah.
So it'll be. I mean, what my thought is that I think it's one of those ones where they really have to kind of see how popular the show is.
Yeah.
Do they have a number of people that are really into it? And would that warrant going through with getting the rights to it to make a house out of it?
And
That's the biggest
you're going to
question.
have to wait for it to release. And is that going to be a quick enough turnaround time? Do they already have
They
everything
said
penciled in?
January,
We
right?
know they do pencil everything in early. So
Yeah.
um, it comes releases in January. I would put this probably at like a 2. I don't
I'm
have much confidence in it.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 3 and a half, just based on the fact that it was on a spec map. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's definitely going to happen or not. So I'll give it a 3, 3 and a half.
So my next one. Now these two, I believe, and we already talked about The Exorcist being a Blumhouse distributed property, and the next two are also Blumhouse productions. Five Nights at Freddy's is going to be a
Oh,
movie.
buddy.
However, the production on this movie doesn't even start until February. So I don't think it's going to be released before this event starts. Obviously, again, another video game turned property. But I know you could base. You have an idea of what the movie's going to be because it's going to be based off the video game. Who knows when this will actually release? I mean, if they start production in February, they could probably wrap it in 3 to 4 months. Which
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I don't know. I mean, I guess my thought is
June
they're
they
probably
wrap.
they're probably targeting a Halloween release for this movie.
Mhm.
But is that enough time to do a house? That's the biggest question. Because I
Yeah,
don't know. I mean, it would have to be like a summer release, I think, for them to make a house out of it for this coming year.
yeah, and it's not even
That's my
starting
theory.
production until February. And we know how things happen with productions. Stuff stalls, stuff happens all the time. So if this was in production right now and it was releasing around February, or even later in spring or early summer, I'd probably put it pretty high, just based off of the relationship they have with Blumhouse. It is a pretty high property. I think people more know about this than they would know that Last of Us.
Yeah, because I think this is just culturally in the zeitgeist of society. I think Five Nights at Freddy's is more of a people recognize what it is because there's so much beyond it that goes into it than just the video game itself. Um, I think it's just the reason I put out there is because like if you look at YouTube, there's a lot of YouTube channels devoted to video gaming or video game culture, and Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the biggest talking points for those communities. So I think this would be more this would be received better than a than a Last of Us house. And
Yep.
partially because The Last of Us, the last time a game released was like 3 or 4 years ago, I think. 2 came out.
Mhm.
And again, not a very I don't want to say not a popular game, but not one of the games people think of when you think, popular AAA title video game, available right now. So again, both are going to be based off of the visual media that comes out, whether it's a TV show, a movie, or whatever. I just think that Five Nights, probably coming from a bigger production company too, like Blumhouse is known for what they do, and that property fits in as a Blumhouse produced picture rather than The Last of Us done by HBO. Because if you think about it, The Last of Us is probably going to be one of those like adult drama type shows with the zombies as a backdrop, almost like The Walking Dead. And how popular will that be? Is it going to be too much of a Walking Dead clone for people to be like, hey, this is I'm totally into this? Or is it going to be one of those things where it's like, yeah, I watched the first couple episodes. It is what it is. It's okay. It's not great. Whereas Five Nights, I think, is going to be more accessible because it's to be a movie rather than HBO. You don't need HBO to see it. And I think it's going to be more popular with more age groups. It's not going to be just, mid-30s, people like us watching Last of Us. It's going to be people from all the way from like 17-year-old kids all the way up to like probably old people watching Five Nights because it's, it's just one of those goofy premises that works as a horror movie.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'd put it at like, what did I say, 2 probably? I'll probably put it as a 2. I'm not
give it
too high on it.
1 or 2 because it's for me, it's more just the timing. I don't think if it's not out by July, they won't do a house for it, at least this year.
Yeah. So I'll do my last IP. And that would be something in the Insidious wheelhouse. Again, another Blumhouse, another Universal Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
They are releasing Insidious 5, July 23rd. This is a follow-up. I think this is a 10 years later kind of thing. Dalton is going to college. It's all the original cast. Patrick Wilson's back. And he's also directing this property.
Oh, nice.
So, with it coming out in July, obviously we could have the house based off of the new movie, which would be interesting, but obviously not something we can talk about because we don't know what's in that. But Insidious has been at HHN before as a part of one of the Blumhouse iterations. I would be interested in seeing a whole house of it. That would be kind of the whole story of Insidious from 1 up until 5. What do you think on Blumhouse or Insidious?
I think it's a pretty good guess. I think it's something that is probably more than likely, especially with a new movie coming out. Being that it still is a Blumhouse property, we're gonna get something Blumhouse. I think Blumhouse is kind of like.
I mean, I would think. I mean,
I think it's like the new Netflix. I think it's a production company, like you said before multiple times tonight, that they have a working relationship with Blumhouse. So I think that something Blumhouse does that within the next year is going to be a house. Insidious makes more sense than Five Nights, for example, because Insidious has been done before. It's a popular movie franchise. People like it. They wouldn't be making 5 if it wasn't I guess maybe they would be making 5 regardless if people felt about it. But bringing back the original cast is a big deal. It's an anniversary, like you said, 10 years since the first one came out. So yeah, I could see this happening. I mean, if I was to give it a ranking, I'd probably give it a 5.5, 6. I think it's better than not as far as chances are concerned. So yeah, I could agree with that.
I would also be around that ballpark. I was going to give it probably a 7. I think it's of these one of the higher likely ones. I'm still pretty high on Exorcist. I'm high on Evil Dead Rises. I think Insidious would make a lot of sense to be a tried and true, and I hope it is. I hope we get this as a standalone house and not a Blumhouse Presents or Horrors of Blumhouse style house again.
I think they would give us one particular property. Mm-hmm. I could see that happening.
I mean, if they did it in the same queue and they broke up like Insidious 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4, or if they staggered the story, if they did like maybe Insidious 1 at that first house of like the story of Dalton and stuff like that, and then maybe the second half is the new movie where it's like that 10-year gap is there physically as that like when you exit Freaky and enter Black Phone, it's kind of like a wormhole of sorts. That would be an interesting take on it as well, like splitting up that story but having it be the same story throughout.
Yeah, I think it sounds like probably, as of right now, it's probably the most plausible Blumhouse.
Yeah,
I mean, for whatever Blumhouse has released in the last couple of years, it's probably the most plausible one. Because Orlando's never had it in an Insidious house either. So
not a strictly one. It's been a piece of their
has it?
horrors
Okay.
of Blumhouse,
So
but not
something,
as.
But it hasn't been its
but
own
again,
house.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, from what I believe, I could be wrong. I haven't really researched that aspect too much, but but that's all I have for the IPs. Do you want to get into your last
I've got one more. I've got one more fun one.
Okay,
and it's that they're bringing Pumpkinhead back. We're gonna get Pumpkinhead back as our beer selection.
Oh God, I hope so.
And only because you and I have mentioned it more than once to multiple bartenders at that event, that someone is going to come back and say, "Hey, we've been asked about Pumpkinhead quite a bit. Can we get it back?" And it's going to happen, and it's going to be thanks to Fear and Beer.
Okay, so I lied. So Insidious was a house standalone at 25. That is correct.
Oh, it was okay. So Orlando has had one.
Orlando had it at 25, and it was a part of the Horrors of Blumhouse at 27. Okay. So this would be the third time. So I mean, revisiting one would be fun, but maybe it will tie a little bit more heavily into the new one or some of the stuff that it hasn't happened since then.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that, then I think they'll go with whatever movie they're releasing. So if it's 5, then they'll go off of that, and probably that movie specifically.
Yeah. So going out of the IPs and into originals, that's like really uncharted territory. This is like these are complete guesses. And the only ones I have are stuff that I'm kind of trying to look for trends of. These 3 are coming from this past year's event in some capacity. Do you think we will see a Sweet's Revenge house?
Yes, but not next year.
So you think there will be a little gap period of time?
I think there'll be a gap year before we get that.
Okay. I would really like to see that. It's hopeful thinking. I don't necessarily know if it would be very high on my list. I'd probably give it like a 2.5, 3.
Yeah.
But not too high. But I do think, like we talked about on our episode last week, I think Sweets, we gave it the award for most likely or most deserving of a house. I think it has a lot of story. I think the settings, the characters are all very fun. I think it would translate into a house the best. I think it would just be a nice house. So I hope it does, but I don't have like high hopes for it. Going now to that Fiesta de Chupacabra house. Do we think we're going to get another original of sorts of some style of like cryptids or like urban legend creatures, whether it's like Bigfoot or some other like style of folklore from a various country?
I'm going to bore you. And yes, but again, not next year.
Okay.
I think it's much like Yeti. There was a gap in time between Yeti and Chupacabras. I think we will eventually have another one, but it just won't be back to back. I think it'll be probably the year after that.
Yeah, I would put this at like a 1, like a very shot in the dark. Now the last one, this one I think would be likely, and that would be something with meaty meats. Another Leave It to Cleaver of sorts. Mm-hmm. We had him in Scary House in 30, and they had a whole food area dedicated to him. And I was kind of expecting to see him as a character in that area, just up top on one of the little stanchions or something like that. But it was just a curious choice to theme a whole food area around that character.
Yeah,
You know, was it to
considering he was
gauge attraction? Is it to I
right.
don't know.
Yeah, no,
But
that's actually yeah. No, because my thought is that they're going to go back to Carrie in some capacity for next year's event. And I think that would be an interesting way to do it because I don't think have they done like has he had his own house before or has he
so
only
Leave
ever
It to
been part of like the
Cleaver.
Carrie?
So Leave It to Cleaver was a house in 2009. So that's
Okay.
where, you know, Meets
been a
Meets
while.
kind of came from. So it's been a while. Since then he's been in kind of, you know, various places. I think he was in the Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters and Mayhem, and then he was in the Welcome to Scary. But I think that it would be time to kind of roll it out. It's a good time. It's been around for a while. And again, we haven't discussed icons at all for this year. I don't think we'll necessarily get
I don't know
one.
if we're going to see a lot of icons, if anything.
But I think he's sort of like an iconic character, so it's nice to have that in the original wheelhouse, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's interesting
Oh.
because, like I said, I mean, I think they'll definitely go back to Carrie in some way, and I think they're going to do something different with Carrie this time, rather than doing the same icons or the same, you know, same locations. I think they're going to maybe give him or even HR Blood and Guts maybe their own house
Something.
as well.
Yeah. Leave It to Cleaver, I'd put it at like a 4. I think I'm definitely more confident over the other two little original ideas and
Yeah,
stuff
I'd give
like
it
that.
probably a 3, but it's right around the same as you.
Yeah. So this is my deepest of deep dives, and I am stretching here. So I was trying to find some sort of trend. So this year at 31, we got Dead Man's Pier. Dead Man's Wharf was the scare zone at 26. So 5 years, a 5-year gap.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to last year, we had Wicked Growth at 30.
Yep.
And then we had a scare zone, Evil Roots, in Central Park at 25, a
Yep.
5-year gap. So, and if Wicked Growth and Evil Roots didn't kind of line up enough for you for 30, we had HHN Icons at 30, and then we had a scare zone of HHN Icons at 25 as well. So another 5-year gap. So for 32, I started looking at the scare zones of 27 that were originals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the two that stuck out is one is Invasion, which is like that sci-fi alien who was also in the Eddie's Revenge scare zone, but that would be coming up on its 5-year anniversary. And then you want to hear the deepest. They had a scare zone called Festival of the Deadliest, and that's where Bones kind of originated. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how many teeth or bones are in your mouth?
In any like in my mouth?
Or like a general mouth?
I don't know, like 38 because there's like what 36 teeth or something like that plus your jaw.
32.
Okay.
32. HHN32.
Oh, I see what you did there.
It's too much of a stretch. I don't know.
Probably, but
but
that's an interesting way to look at it.
Bones as an icon for 32 because there's 32 teeth in your mouth.
Yeah, maybe. I guess so.
I don't know. It's something I read on the
It's
internet.
kind of a
I could be
stretch,
wrong
but
with the 32.
Bones was on the Pumpkin Lord T-shirt
Yep.
last year, so
Yeah.
you never know. He may show up again.
So-
I think
so
Invasion is
just-
more likely, but
Yep. So I think either of those two, I mean, it would be interesting to see if this was a trend. I did go back to 29 and try and find something from 24, but there wasn't a house to a scare zone at that point. So it really only a 2-year trend of picking a scare zone from 5 years previously to give it the house treatment. But if they did do that trend, and if that is a trend, I think it would leave us to Invasion or Festival of the Deadliest. I think Invasion would be a much more fun house, schlocky, sci-fi.
Yeah.
I think it would be fun to kind of revisit that world. And if I'm not mistaken, I think
if you think about it, for Eddie's like camera action or whatever, they pulled the fisherman from Dead Man's Wharf.
Yep.
and made a house out of it. So pulling another character from that scare zone and the scare zone from 5 years prior, I mean, I guess the trend would suit. The trend would follow, anyways.
Yeah, so that's just something to keep an eye on. I mean, am I going to say Invasion's coming as a house? 100% no, but will I put it at like a 5.5? Yeah, I'll wager it up that high.
It's an interesting take. Yeah.
I'll follow the trend and I'll see where I'll follow the rabbit hole and see where it takes me. But yeah, that was the last of my my deep dive things like that. A lot of good options. Honestly, like we said earlier, I do think this year might be a more IP heavy year.
I do too. I still think
if they don't get a name, like, I mean, we had Halloween, which is obviously big in the community. We had The Weeknd, which is just a big name in general. They want to follow that trend of bringing in big names, I think.
Right. And keep in mind too, I mean, like we've said before, they planned this event well in advance. So they may have already had 5 IPs kind of in the works for this year's event. And when Evil Dead kind of get pulled and shelved, they may say, well, let's just do 6 IPs, do Evil Dead, and then we'll come up with like 4 originals. So I could see them at least doing 6 IPs next year.
Yeah. So that's what we got for our way too early HHN32 predictions.
Much too early. This is a silly
much
episode.
too early. But this is the same time we did ours. Actually, we did ours earlier last year.
We did ours. We do know that we're going to be exactly right on one of these things. So we get that going.
We are right on one of these things, which we would have said if we did record this 2 weeks ago. But we didn't. So yeah, let us know what you think in the comments below. Is there some properties that we didn't mention? Is there stuff that we've overlooked? You know, there's stuff that we talked about on previous episodes of our way too early predictions, like The Conjuring and It and stuff like that. I don't know if that's something we were going to look at this year again. There is one more I forgot that I didn't even put on my list. But it is another IP because they are doing another fucking one of these movies. They are coming out with Saw 10.
Of course they are. Oh, that's right. And Jigsaw's back in it, isn't he?
Tobin Bell is back in it. I don't think anything is really come out about it. I think it is a Halloween release. It's October 27th, 2023.
Oh, God, I hope
so
not.
That movie won't be out before the start of it. But much like The Exorcist, it's a story that if you just put a Saw house out, the promotion itself is in the name, not necessarily what's inside the house. So putting Saw as a house does a justice for the release. It doesn't have to be about the new Saw 10.
I mean, to be fair, Saw just in general, you can pretty much do whatever you want and call it a Saw house.
Yeah.
Because outside of the first one, it's all pretty much the same stuff. People in traps, can they get out of it, and how are they going to get messed up? Like, that's really kind of how that friggin' that series works. So
yeah, and they had a Saw house at 2009, so it has been there before, but not in a long time. Do you put any stock into the Saw series coming back to HHN at all?
I mean, I guess just based on the fact that there's a movie coming out and it's a popular franchise, yeah. Do I want it? Probably not, but I mean,
the merch with Chucky and what's the puppet's name? Billy the puppet.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
It's definitely an IP name that would draw, I think. I'll put it at like 4.5. You know, just about halfway, but not enough to commit to it.
I would go with that too. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, now I think we are done. That was a little last sprinkle on top. But yeah, like I said, let us know what you think. How off are we? How terrible are we at this? But we did nail a couple things last year, and last year we did it in October. So maybe there's something to it. Maybe we've caught on to some trends. I don't know. Maybe not. Time will tell.
Really lucky.
I can't wait to listen back to this episode in August once they drop the full lineup and be like, oh, we were not even close. But I think that about wraps it up tonight, folks. So until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
It's cursed. Cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare. And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.